All right, everyone, good morning. My name is Sam Young. I am the Staff Life Vice Chair of Staff Council. And this morning I would like to welcome you all to our in-person June Coffee and Conversation with Dr. Marnie Oakley. Thank you so much for being here, Dr. Oakley.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. She is the Dean of Dental Medicine, and I'm going to ask you to tell us just a small snippet about yourself.
Yeah, sure. I think about my relation to Pitt and how my career and who I am as a person kind of all started. I grew up in a small town in northeastern Pennsylvania. It's called Mountaintop. There's actually a handful of people here in Pittsburgh, I think, that are from Mountaintop. I've heard about it and heard from them, so it's exciting. But really tiny town. Our house was so small and rural. We heated our house with wood. Oh, wow. So there was I grew a lot of respect for hard work and things like that. But yeah, I came from that small town, and my brother actually played football for Pitt. He was a D1 recruit and, recruited heavily. He was a great athlete, and despite the fact that Joe Paterno was at our house trying to recruit him to Penn State, he went to Pitt, and we've been Pitt fans ever since. So I spent a lot of time in my high school days, because he's older, driving back and forth with my parents in our beat-up Volkswagen bus, watching him play football here in Old Pitt Stadium. So I always thought, I know I want to go to dental school. I should probably go to Pitt because they'll probably pick me over someone else from a different school if my grades aren't good enough. So, came to Pitt, went to dental school here, met my husband, been married over 32 years, have 2 kids, boy and a girl, and who are older grown-up adults. That happens. And we went into the Navy, went into the military after dental school. And it was a great experience, something we didn't expect and didn't plan for, but amazing life experience for us. And we came back here, my husband, I married a Pittsburgher. So you've heard before, and it's true, Pittsburghers don't leave Pittsburgh. They don't even leave their suburbs. Like, we have to live in Bethel Park because that's where he grew up. Correct. And that's why we're in our starter home. I was telling Sam before we started, we're still in our starter home, and one of the reasons for that is because a house that I could find that might have been bigger for us as a family was not in Bethel Park. So, and God forbid, was in a suburb adjacent, which was a rival suburb, so here we are. And now that the kids are out of the house, essentially, it's space enough for us, but yeah. We came back to Pittsburgh, and his father was a dentist, and his father was a dentist. Wow. I know, so he went into this practice, and I was sort of adjacent, and I thought, well, I'm gonna spend some time teaching at the dental school part-time, and very rewarding, and it just kind of morphed. One of those, again, unexpected, unplanned events in your life that you think, what a blessing to have found a career that I was not looking for. So, before I knew it, I was full-time, and here I am.
So I kind of know you just in passing, because I was working at pharmacy at the time, and you had 2 dogs that you would bring into dental medicine in the Commons area, and that's how I kind of just ran into you incidentally.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I can. Gosh, if it wasn't so fantastically hot today, I would have brought one of those dogs. One is more behaved than the other. Their names are Steve and Teddy, and they are golden retrievers, and they're certified therapy dogs. So a quick story of a long story is that when my daughter went to college, went to Pitt as a freshman, she got terribly sick. And she found herself in a very serious, acute situation medically. As she recovered from that, one of the best days that she would always find in her recovery was when the therapy dog would come to the unit and help kids recover. So just so happened we always had 2 Goldens, and when one of our dogs passed away, we said, we should make the next one a therapy dog. And so Steve was the first. Steve and I would then volunteer at Children's Hospital's rehab unit, And that was the real purpose of him being a therapy dog. The reason why you saw him in Salk Hall, though, is because when Steve was young, I would take him, he was just a year old when he got his certification. And I remember talking to people who were dog trainers, and I said, you know, I'm not sure my dog is good at this. He's a bit of a jerk. What should I do? And they're like, well, he's still kind of young. When do you take him? I say, well, I take him in the morning. And they said, well, why don't you tire him out, take him in the afternoon? So I would bring him to work and hide him under my desk, and then bring him to the rehab unit in the afternoon. And when I did that, of course, the students would see him, and they're like, what is that? And I'm like, oh, it's Steve, it's our dog. I tell them the story, and they're like, well, we need therapy too. And I said, oh, really? You know, kids with brain injury versus dental students, but, you know, they're right. And and then, you know, Teddy came and we got him certified as well. So they're kind of nice little mascots. When I lecture, they run around the classroom, you know, the auditorium. People have like treats in different areas, just kind of staged. But they really enjoy their time there. It's really great for them.
They were so cute.
They are adorable. They are.
So you told us a little bit about where you came from. Why did you decide to go into dentistry?
Yeah, it's a common question that I find the answer so simplistic, actually. So I was always a fan of the sciences, and you know, you're in high school and you know what you're kind of good at and what you like. So that always landed in the sciences for me. And then, you know, you talk to your parents and they always give you great advice. And my mother said, you know, gosh, in medicine, Marnie, there's no chance you're getting up in the middle of the night to save somebody. And I'm like, you're so right. I love sleeping, and I want to have a balanced career, and I wondered how I would fit into medicine. And on the other side, something that's really important to me and very fulfilling is doing things with my hands. You know, I'm not an artist per se, but I love drawing, and I can draw something good enough to frame, you know, and that really, I love that. And I thought, wow, you can really balance medicine and healthcare and service to your community with this artistic side. Wouldn't that be great? So it always just seemed, so I was fortunate, I think, as a high schooler to kind of understand that, and then I knew I was driven to dentistry as a career.
So do you feel that doing that and knowing that in high school gave you an advantage in some way, shape, or form, so you didn't have to kind of figure it out as you went along in college?
Yeah, I would say the advantage would be in time. Mm-hmm. So I could be very focused and driven and find those paths. So I didn't have to like reinvent myself. There were opportunities for me to like get to college early, and there was an opportunity for me to get to dental school early. Mm-hmm. So, but did that really matter in the grand scheme of things? Probably not a lot, but I do feel for people who don't necessarily know, you know, yeah, and struggle with that. But, you know, it's always okay to reinvent yourself. I mean, I'm sitting here today, I can tell you on a regular basis, I don't necessarily hone in on that clinical dentistry. That's a very small part of what became my career. So if I was driven to that because solely of what I thought it would, mm-hmm, I was definitely short-sighted of what it could become.
Gotcha. And that makes a lot of sense, coming from where you literally started till now.
Yeah, it's not the same career at all.
Yeah.
It helps me to have that background, certainly. I have different credibility, mm-hmm, and insight and perspective, but I am not doing dentistry every day, that's for sure.
You're working with students.
I'm working with students.
So did you have anyone that helped you get to where you are currently?
Yeah, I mean, you think about, it's a great question. It's always very powerful to reflect on your path and be very grateful, yeah, and reflect on those individuals that helped you, right? I mean, like most people, I think, I would start obviously with my parents. I come from a very tight family. My father on the Italian side, so I had that Italian culture of like love and loyalty. I mean, he was very hardworking, you know, I valued that. I remember growing up as a child, and it must have been pre-kindergarten, that I would get up with my dad and like watch him get ready for work. And I was like, so you're gonna put those shoes on and clap around the house and get your bag, like his attaché case, and put his tie and his suit on. And I always admired that. You know, he was gonna go off and go work all day. How was work? You know, I don't know why I liked it so much, but I was really intrigued. You know, my mom became, with just a high school education, became a small business owner in, again, Mountaintop, a very, very small place, which the risk is very high. Not to mention the investment for us as a family. We didn't have a lot of money. You know, I remember looking at my father and seeing his like tax returns and saying, I'm not sure we can afford to send me to college. You know, my brother got to go to college for free, but I'm like, Dad, people can't afford college. That's us, right? And he, you know, I remember it like it was yesterday. We were in the kitchen and he said, I would never want you to think that. And I'm like, well, I do. I mean, the figures don't lie. But, you know, we found a way. But, you know, my mother really taught me about strategic, driven goals and to be bold and be confident and trust your abilities and really go after what's important to you, and that having a fulfilling career matters. I mean, my mother, I love her, and we had a great family, but she openly said, being a housewife is not enough for me. I'm like, fair, that's okay. It wouldn't have been enough for me either, but that was hard for her to do, like in the past, you know? I really, really, really admire her for that. You know, I of course have my military career, so for me, all veterans are inspiring to me, you know, and really, again, I didn't realize I was gonna go into the military, but to be adjacent to people that make sacrifices for truly our freedom and their lives. And I don't mean that like in a corny sort of way, but I worked at a Marine Corps Air Station for 3 years, and those pilots went on training missions, everyday training missions, and didn't always come home. You know, there are accidents, there are risks all the time. So it's not just wartime sort of, and I think we've learned an awful lot about veterans and PTSD and what they really truly deal with. So that's so inspiring to me. And I try to make sure that I'm, you know, being very grateful for those experiences and being very reflective of them, to think, you know, I'm not making the same sacrifice they are, certainly. I was doing their dentistry for them while they were doing these things. I actually get a little uncomfortable on Veterans Day with like, thank you for your service. I'm like, I get it, but it's not like I didn't serve, but I didn't serve that way. I really didn't. So, you know, I really try to learn from that and make it be part of like a better version of myself, right? If they're gonna give me that gift, I should learn from that, you know? And I have amazing people I work with. Some are here today. I have that have been incredible role models for me, some of which we talked about before we started. But, you know, and my family. My family is really inspiring to me. My husband's the opposite of me. Some people at school know, because he's a part-time faculty member. Oh, wow. And, you know, he's really calm and collective, and almost, I usually describe him barely alive. You know, it's just easy. But that mentality will make you live to be like 120 if you don't get hit by a bus. I mean, really, my stress that I have, he's a great balance, you know, and my kids. My daughter is the toughest person I know. My son is incredibly loyal. I love that about him. You know, having a nice, strong team for him is what drives him. So we got to take all that in. Yeah. I think it's just so important.
Do you feel that your military career kind of shaped you in a different way to be a dean of dental medicine?
It's funny that you asked that, because I would have never thought that it did. Sometimes you're learning those lessons and you don't realize it at the time. I was talking with one of our neighbors when we were in the military, became an incredibly close friend. My husband was best man at his wedding. He's the godfather for my daughter. He's our family. And I was talking to him on the way in on Friday about some changes that I'm making and some shifts and some different evaluation processes and things like that. And he pointed out, he goes, Marnie, you understand that because that was part of your military career and your training. And I would have never thought that to be true if he hadn't pointed it out. So what becomes maybe part of the fabric of your being then, especially because I was so young. I was in my early to mid-20s. So I was ripe. I was ripe to be molded, and it definitely is part of my structure, and it must come out. Like, I don't realize when it does, but it must.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's really interesting just to hear that kind of perspective from that part of your life and to bringing it till now. So
Yeah.
it's good.
Thanks.
Yeah, so we have a few questions from
Okay.
the Qualtrics survey that I want to get to. The first one was, why did you choose the field of dentistry as opposed to all the other medical and health-based professions, other than you don't have to get up in the middle of the night, essentially, to take the
So
calls?
it's that adjacent to the artistic side. So, I could see myself like more like in dentistry. I thought myself more to be surgeon oriented because of the detail. But then again, I wanted a balance to go through all of the aspects of dentistry, because once you specialize, you're staying there. So I really couldn't give up all of dentistry. But I've considered, when I look back at who I am right now, I thought, I know I considered veterinary medicine a while ago when I was a kid, like most kids. And what do you think my mother had to say to me? You'd never be able to put a dog to sleep, And she's probably right about that. But I think I could. But I find myself really drawn to veterinary medicine, and I'm intrigued with that enormously, because they have to know how to treat every single animal.
Yeah.
Like, I think about the human body and all the anatomy and everything that we learned. Like, wow, they are really powerful clinicians. So I definitely did think about that.
I don't think I'd be able to put a dog to sleep.
I don't think I could.
Did you always want to be associated with dentistry in the aspect of working in clinical settings versus in academia?
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. I think I must have known early on that I wanted some academia, because when we came right back to Pittsburgh, I reached out to teach part-time, and then got more and more opportunity, mostly from Tom Braun, the dean that hired me. Really invested in me. I'm not exactly sure what he saw, but he was a very talented and insightful leader. He made a point of sitting like 5, 10, 15 minutes with almost everyone in our whole organization. And I remember when him asking, like, maybe you'd make an appointment, you'd stop up sometime. I'm like, to talk to you? Just us? And he's like, yeah. Okay, and you go, and he's picking up on things, he's reading the room, he's trying to see where opportunities exist in the organization, and at the same time, he's just listening. He was a really great, compassionate, kind listener. Really great.
That's awesome. Conflict resolution and conflict techniques.
Ooh.
Do you see a need for it?
Yes. Oh my gosh, yes. Yeah. So it's one of my favorite leadership topics to talk about. So you're gonna have to keep me in check.
Okay.
Or we'll be done. It really truly is, because it's our human nature to avoid conflict, avoid it in many different ways, like either we just walk away from it, turn our back on it, react in a passive-aggressive way, go home, vent out, or at the office, vent to your neighbor in your office about it. But it's not productive. It really needs to be addressed, right? And it's not productive not only for the organization, but it's not productive for us as humans to say, I'm just going to let that kind of sit and fester. And of course, then it gets bigger and bigger. But I think our true challenges with conflict, at least for me in my career, has been, in my personal growth, has been to understand that I'm probably absorbed in my own emotions right now and how I feel about that conflict, which is part of digesting the conflict and part of getting to the other side. But for the most part, the longer that I find that I stay there, and the less time I spend on understanding why it's a conflict for you, or what you might be thinking, or how we got here, or how we could prevent it in the future, the longer that conflict stays. So, I need to wait till my emotion is in a proper place, that I quite simply care enough about you and the issue. And really, you have to care about that person. And I think more so than the issue. To say, all right, I've processed my emotions like a grown-up. Here they are. I know what they are. And the preparation, when you say, is it worth it, with the techniques, the preparation comes in that process and saying, all right, what really bothered me about this? And you don't have to let it go. You can stay true to it. But as grown-ups, we can discuss that professionally, and I can tell you how I feel, and I can invite you certainly first to tell me how you feel about that to get to the resolution. If we can't get there and the emotions are too tied up into it, we'll never get to that tiny little step. But I think more often our desire to want to win the conflict gets in the way, right? If I break down my emotion too far, I'm just letting you get away with it. And that's what I hear most often if I'm in a lecture about this. Most participants are like, yeah, but he's so wrong. Okay, he's so wrong. But is that our goal? Is our goal to point out that he's wrong and then think that the conflict is going to go away? Well, it won't. It won't. So what is our goal? Resolution. So let's try and think a little bit about what might this be about. What else? And really, one of the tactics I love to use is I call it relationship food. Is begin to find that one thing that you truly care and admire about that person, why they are worth sitting in front of right now and resolving this conflict, and feed the relationship by saying, Sam, what I really care about you and what I really admire about you is this, and use that to get through the emotion and to feed that relationship and try and pull that person to the other side with you. It doesn't mean you need to say, what the conflict was about doesn't matter. But you balance it, So I really think it's so easy for us to focus too much on our emotions. And good leaders, right? It's not about us. If we're really truly going to be a good leader, it's never about you personally. It's about who you're leading and who you're trying to inspire. So, if you really want to be servant-minded that way, you're going to really dial into how you can resolve that conflict and what that person might be thinking themselves.
And it seems to me we need that type of conflict resolution more than ever nowadays.
We do. There's not a lot of grace these days. There's, from one comment to a judgment, forever, right? And then you're stuck in that bucket. That's something that I work an awful lot of when I think about my own leadership opportunities for growth, forgiveness, and really looking clearly with a graceful mindset at individuals and saying, I understand, but what might they be going through? What made them do that? Why do they believe that? What misinterpretations might be at the base of that? What might I be misinterpreting? How can we step forward together with grace? Most people want to do that. People by nature just don't want to have conflict.
And it could be, and just branching off of that, it could be just what happened during the morning prior to that talking to you, for example. So
we all have things that we're dealing with that we don't always tell people, right?
Yeah.
You see it just in road rage. I think until our family went through some really, truly difficult personal times, especially when my daughter was sick, it really gave me renewed perspective on, and I drive from the South Hills to Oakland for over almost 30 years, so I have a lot of opportunities for road rage, and I think you never know. You really never truly know. And does it matter? Am I going to get there 25 seconds faster? Come on, although I would love that, because 25 seconds plus 25 seconds plus, but you know how that goes. But it's not worth it.
Parking space.
But it's not worth it.
Thank you for that. That was really insightful.
Good.
I appreciate that. The next question is, what do you hope to offer your legacy during your time as dean?
Yeah, so I think, again, without planning it or really, really, truly, I have an articulated vision that's much more methodical and strategic, and sounds very much like a strategic plan. And that's not at all, that's the dry answer that nobody wants to hear. But the reality is, I hope that after my time, or when people reflect on my time, that they see that this is a time where we've been more collaborative. I truly, truly believe in the strength of collaboration, and not just at its surface, but the power and the impact that we can do. And we're in healthcare. So, we can truly change lives. We can change the lives of our students, of our employees, of our faculty and our staff, and of our patients. So I really, truly hope that some of the demonstration of the work and the product that we'll have in my time as dean will show that we couldn't have done that without strong collaborations, whether that was across health science schools or whether it was across the UPMC and the health center, just leveraging other relationships with industry, with federal government or local government. I think sometimes we get so mired in the day-to-day detail that our vision becomes nothing more than just keeping the lights on, right? So looking for bigger impact. I hope that's part of what people reflect on my time.
And going off of that, what do you feel, or how has your leadership style changed between then and now?
Yeah, so I used to be able to say before I became dean that I had every single position in the dental school except for one, and now I kind of can't say that. So most faculty positions I feel like I've had, and it's been a very methodical for which I'm very grateful for. But I remember learning early on and being so grateful to learn this, because I don't know where I'd be without it, but learning that your opportunities early on in your career, most likely I got because I was good at doing something. So I was a doer. It didn't make me a leader, but yet I got a leadership role. So what? So as I went to leadership training, and I'm a junkie for leadership training, as I started going and learning more about myself, I thought, well, you want me to be somebody different than I am. Like, what I'm doing right now is kind of working for me. I don't know if you know, but like I was this, and then I was this, and then I was this. So I'm just gonna keep going, right? So really seeing and recognizing that transition between becoming a doer and a leader. So now my role is, some people who work around me might say, to do less. She's not doing as much as before, but really to lead them so that their path is completely unencumbered, and unencumbered in a way where they can really think in a broad way with full creativity. What have you not thought about? Where can you go? And help me, and I want to be the grease in the wheels to help you get there. Because if I don't inspire them to get there, and if they're concerned about where they're going, and I don't create that path, they'll be stuck kind of spinning their wheels and wondering what task I want them to do next, right? Tasks are important, they matter. Runs wins baseball games, and winning games means we can get to the series and then be the champions. I get it, but how can I be there to be a facilitator to inspire their growth? That's very different than being a doer. And sometimes my doer mentality comes out too much at work, right? So then I have to dial that back, and instead of saying, hey, give me that, let them run with that and learn.
And that's really interesting because, and also we had been talking earlier about formal advancement opportunities instead of spinning your wheels.
Right.
And this is the last question I think we can get to today, but when there's no formal advancement opportunity within a unit, what are other incentives for a staff member to develop their leadership potential?
Yeah, so you never know what's behind the curtain is my reaction to that. It's a great question, and I said a couple times in my career, I'm in my terminal position. Well, was I? Actually not. So my advice is there's always something, and dial into your natural talents, use them, look for opportunities to just help. Look at someone and say, I see what you're doing, tell me more about that. Ask creative questions, insightful questions, let them answer, and then offer your assistance. I've seen so many careers, my career is one of them, be built on just being willing to do a job that's not quite in your job, right? And then, to not have that mentality like, that's not my job, but to just do it out of the goodness of your soul and say, I think I could probably help you with that. Then people who are watching that's what happened with me, say, you know what, I'd like to talk to you. Could you maybe help us with this? And before you know it, you've kind of scope creeped yourself out of your current job, not knowing where you would land. You can do that in that way. And you can do it through training. You can get another degree and not really know what that degree may offer, but to start to talk to people in the industry and in the organization about it, and really talk about how you'd like to contribute. There's always a way to contribute outside your current role, always.
It's really good advice.
Yeah.
One last question, not on here, that I usually ask. Can you tell us what is something that you would tell someone that was on the fence about coming to Pitt that would sell them on coming to Pitt Dental?
Pitt Dental, not just Pitt.
Not just Pitt.
Yeah, I would tell our students all the time, come because you want to, really. We're looking at you as much as you're looking at us, and we want it to be mutual, right? So show us. I think it's hard for students when they interview, especially, they all are dressed like so proper, and, I'm like, be you. We want to see you. We're going to show you us clearly. So this should be the environment that you want. I personally believe we are a supportive and caring environment. Know that you'd be coming to a place where people would truly care about you. That's really important to me. It's important to our culture. Our folks know that, and really, truly, I don't want people on my staff that don't inherently believe that. So sometimes that's important to them. Sometimes, they look for other metrics, and that's okay. I mean, I'm biased, we do fantastically well on all the metrics, but, I think it's an easy choice. I really do. Yeah.
Well, I would like to thank everyone who joined us today for our coffee and conversation, especially Dr. Marnie Oakley for taking some of her morning this morning for us. We appreciate it.
My pleasure.
In case you missed any of our prior coffee and conversations, please join us online in our events tab on Staff Council. They will be listed there. Next month, I will be joined with Coach Dan Fisher in July, the volleyball coach. So we will look forward to that. That will be over in the William Pitt Union. So thank you guys so much for listening, and we will see you next time.
Thank you.